Nobody believed the old lady's dreams, until her German shepherd uncovered a chilling secret. Thunder stitched the sky into jagged seams while rain ticked across the windows like fingernails on glass. Eleanor Hayes stirred from her armchair, breath held, mug cold, the same dream still clinging to her like smoke. A faint voice beneath the maple's roots whispering her pet name, Ellie, as if the ground remembered her better than family. Zeus, her German shepherd, rose before the frame even shook, ears high, body tense, staring through the door toward the backyard's slick dark. She took her cane, crossed the kitchen, and unlatched the door. Wet night pressed close, smelling of cut wood and metal. The stump where the tree had stood that afternoon gleamed raw under the wavering street lamp, its rings like a target. On it sat a black bag she did not own, tied with a coarse cord, seams shimmering with runoff. Wind would have shoved it off, instead it seemed anchored, waiting. Zeus moved ahead, barking in short, disciplined bursts, glanced back, urging. Lightning laid the yard bare. The bag crawled, no, tightened, like a held breath. A whisper slipped from the sodden roots, softer than rain yet unmistakable. Find me. Her pulse hammered. The cane slipped, she caught herself on the rail, knuckles blanched. From the neighbor's gutter came a metallic drip, steady as a metronome counting down. The streetlight blinked, recovered, blinked again. Zeus planted himself beside the stump, muscles strung, eyes fixed. Another tremor rippled underfoot, traveling through planks into her bones. The dream's voice sounded closer, young, scared, real. Eleanor reached, fingers hovering inches from the cord. She smelled bleach where rain should have lived. A cold draft slid under the door against the storm. Far off a siren rose, choked out. The porch light died. The yard went black, and something inside the bag knocked twice. What happened next will shock you. Morning thinned the storm into a silvery glaze over the Ohio cul-de-sac. Eleanor Hayes lay awake, the whisper from her dream clinging like damp air. Ellie, find me. From under the maple's roots that no longer existed. The heater breathed, the refrigerator clicked, the mantel clock ticked. No voice now, yet the feeling remained, a pressure beneath ordinary sound. Her hips ached. Her hands trembled until she closed them around the cane beside the bed. Zeus, her German shepherd, appeared in the doorway, ears high, eyes pointed toward the back of the house. His tag tapped the ring as he turned, then waited. I heard it, she told him, unsure whether she meant the dream or something still moving under the morning. She moved slowly through the hallway lined with photographs. Max at 7, gap-toothed and fearless. Max at 12 with a trophy. Max last fall taller than she remembered, trying to look severe and only managing earnest. The house smelled faintly of lemon oil. She made tea, the bag bobbing like a small raft in a pale current. The split level had been hers for 4 decades, beige siding, white shutters, a porch that remembered winter lights. The maple had been its anchor, a green umbrella that stitched seasons together, shade for birthdays, a roof for grief. Yesterday the crew had cut it down, now a raw stump sat bright as bone. Clara arrived without knocking, perfume tidy, ponytail precise, voice shaped for offices. Morning, she said. A small pharmacy bag thumped onto the counter. Follett, take one with lunch. She scanned the sink, the plate, the dog, then Eleanor's face. Did you sleep? Not well, Eleanor said. I dreamed. The voice again. Clara's mouth thinned. We have discussed this. Change scrambles routines. The yard looks strange. A storm rattles you, and new medication. Your brain invents a message and plays it back. Don't feed it. It didn't feel invented, Eleanor said. It sounded young. It always does, Clara replied, rinsing a cup. Her gaze slid to the sliding door. Zeus stood there with his nose at the seam, body tense, attention soldered to the stump. And now he's agitated because you are, she added. It's circular. Zeus gave a whine. He was a rescue, a dog who believed in posts and boundaries, who woke her when pills waited, who stood guard during thunder as if he understood lightning's schedule. Today he looked coiled. Accuracy made him an animal. I'll check the yard, Eleanor said. You will not, Clara answered, stepping between her and the door. The grass is slick. If you fall, we will spend the afternoon at urgent care while I explain that the bruises came from chasing a story. Sometimes stories chase us. Eleanor said. That tree steadied this house. It threatened the foundation, Clara said, numbers in her tone. Roots in the drain line, limb over the roof, rot. Removal was practical. Practical doesn't soften losing it, Eleanor said, and let the conversation end because the doorbell chimed. Max's voice reached the kitchen a breath later. Gran, coach canceled early practice. He arrived with drizzle in his hair and squeaking sneakers, hugged her carefully, then rubbed Zeus's shoulder. You okay? I am now, she said. Shoes, Clara said, point. He kicked them onto the mat, then glanced through the glass. He's locked on, Max murmured. The stump's rings shone like coins. Around it the soil lay disturbed, small pucks left by yesterday's equipment. Did the crew come back, he asked. No, Clara. Eleanor slid the door open a handspan. Cool air washed in, sap sweet with a thin metallic thread that didn't belong to morning. Zeus pushed through, paused and looked back. Max steadied Eleanor's elbow, and together they stepped onto the porch. Boards still slick from rain, held memories of winters. The rail held her weight without complaint. Zeus moved straight to the stump, no detours. He touched wood with his nose, drew a long breath, then pawed once at the ground beside it, an exact deliberate tap. He lifted his head and looked at Eleanor, gaze bright and unwavering. What's he got? Max whispered. Something that matters, she said. Clara remained at the threshold, arms knotted. It's a stump, she called. Inside, people will stare. Eleanor set her palm on the stump. The wood felt cool and slick, rings smooth under her skin. With her eyes closed, she saw ribbons tied there across years: pink for Max's birth, orange for her husband's clean scan, black after the last. The tree had carried their calendar, now the stump reflected a washed sky. She opened her eye. Mud streaked the edge. A thin strand of yellow twine snagged in the rough saw marks. She pinched it free and raised it to her nose. Bleach. Max saw the flinch. The crew used orange cords yesterday, he said quietly. Debris, Clara answered. Crews leave bit. Max slipped the twine into his pocket, then stood beside Zeus, unconsciously matching the dog's stance. Zeus traced a tight semicircle, nose low, then pressed his paw into a dark patch, and held it there, like a finger marking a crucial line. Eleanor felt the whisper rise again, not sound now but pressure, like weather before it breaks. She knew that feeling, the intuition dismissed as worry that had nonetheless saved appointments. Years of being told to be reasonable had taught her which doubts deserved a check. We'll watch, she said, more to Zeus than to Clara. Clara exhaled. I have to get back to the office. Max. Homework before games. Mom, take the tablet with food. Please don't wander outside alone. I cannot juggle a crisis and a close. We're fine, Eleanor said, eyes on the ground. Clara left a kiss of air near Max's hair and closed the door too firmly. The thunk startled birds from the neighbor's birch, turning light into moving patch. The cul-de-sac resumed its weekday pulse. A delivery van eased in. A stroller wheel squeaked. A garage door hummed open. Max leaned against the rail. You really dreamed a voice? He asked softly. I did, she said. Some dreams aren't entertainment. They're alarm. I believe you. They stood together while minutes stretched clean. Zeus, adjusted by inches but never surrendered the mark. The house waited behind them. The yard waited ahead with puddles, flattened grass, and the bright disk of cut wood. In the shallow between, Eleanor placed herself like a hinge, the cane grounding her, Max's sleeve touching hers. She listened. The stump's face mirrored the pale sky. In the rings she counted birthdays, school nights, winters, summers, the years that had passed under the crown that was gone. Loss thinned a place and sharpened it. The whisper pressed forward again, a certainty with no paperwork. Zeus's ears tilted toward her without leaving the ground. Max's fingers brushed her sleeve. A pulse. We'll keep watch, she said, as long as it takes. Zeus thumped his tail once, quiet as a vow, and fixed his eyes on the unsettled patch beside the stump, as if the yard itself had a heartbeat he could hear and would not let anyone else forget. By late afternoon the storm crept back, darkening the cul-de-sac and turning the fresh stump into a wet coin set in mud. Eleanor stood on the porch with her cane while Zeus carved tight circles near the cut, nose low, tail rigid. The whisper from morning hadn't faded. It pressed up through the ground like breath trapped under a lid, carrying a name only one person used. Ellie. Here. Max hovered at the steps, jacket flapping, sneakers soaked. He won't quit, he said carefully, as if sound might fracture something delicate and necessary between earth and air. I know, Eleanor answered, feeling pressure under her shoes line up with the ache in her hips. She matched her breathing to the rain. Zeus planted his paws beside the stump and gave one measured bark, the kind he saved for certainty. Then he dug. Mud jumped in sharp bursts. His paws cut a trench that filled as quickly as it opened, yet he kept going, shoulders driving, chest low. The yard smelled of sap and decaying leaves. Then something sterile and wrong, the chemical bite she'd noticed at dawn. The whisper grew louder, no longer a suggestion but a plea riding the rain. Clara came down the hall with her phone, heels ticking against tile. What is happening? She asked, as if the scene had already failed a test. Zeus has found something, Eleanor said. He's mirroring you, Clara replied, moving to the glass. Max, bring him inside before he tears up the lawn. Max didn't move. Listen, they still. Through the hiss came a faint hollow thud. Not thunder, not a tool. Two soft knocks from the wrong side of the wood. Zeus froze, ears blade sharp, then dug faster, flinging grit across bright rings. I won't, Eleanor said, unhooking the lock anyway. She stepped onto the porch, cane tapping, Max close behind, water swallowing her slippers in one cold rush. Zeus leaned his shoulder against her leg, as if building a wall around the patch he guarded. Another thud, closer now, 2 beats and a pause. The whisper rose with it, a young frightened exhale. Eleanor pressed her palm to the damp earth, vibration shivered into her bones. There's someone down there, she said. Zeus responded by throwing his weight into the ground with renewed force. Mud piled at his hop. His claws scraped something that clicked. He stopped, nose working, then pawed with slow care, aware he could do harm. Across the hedge, Mrs. Larson's screen door squeaked. The widow from 2 houses over leaned beneath a vinyl awning, scarf tight over gray hair, eyes sharp. You folks all right? She called. I heard him carrying on. We're fine, Clara said quickly. Training got out of hand. Mary, Eleanor called. Can you come here a moment? Clara's look warned restraint, but Miss Larson was already stepping into the drizzle, slippers darkening, robe cinched. Even retired, she moved with a nurse's economy, counting details in quick, exact glances. Zeus flicked his tail once at her approach, then resumed digging. What are you hearing? She asked. Knocking, Max said. Under the stump. Mrs. Larson tilted her head. A gust cut the rain, and for one small heartbeat, the street held its breath. 2 dull taps rose from the ground, close enough to rearrange her face from curiosity to alarm. Good Lord, she said. That's a person. It's water shifting, Clara snapped. This is how panic spreads. Zeus whined and pressed his ear to the shallow hole. He growled, a steady tone that vibrated in Eleanor's knees. When he lifted his head, his muzzle wore a faint rust stain. Max saw it, and swallowed. Eleanor tasted metal in the wet air. We need help, Mrs. Larson said, already pulling her phone. I'm calling an emergency. Absolutely not, Clara replied. We'll look ridiculous when they find mud and roots. If there's even a chance, we cannot wait, Eleanor said. Clara glanced toward the street, weighing witnesses against schedules, embarrassment against delay, then exhaled through tight teeth. Fine, but when they say it's nothing, this ends. Zeus didn't wait for permission. He dug while Mrs. Larson spoke to the dispatch. His paws found a patch that sounded different, a hollow knock under a thin layer. Eleanor and Max pulled mud with their hands, careful not to collapse the sides. The earth sagged, heavy as doubt, cold as coin. Beneath the slope lay a board, pale wood beneath black soil. Mrs. Larson kept her voice clipped. Possible entrapment near a recent tree removal. Audible knocks. Dog alerted. Send units now. She looked up, lips bloodless. They're coming. The knocks returned. Faster, 3 this time. Urgent. Eleanor bent low. Hold on, she said into the seam. We hear you. Zeus licked the mud from her knuckles, gluing strength into them. Max slid his jacket under her knees, so she could lean without sinking. Clara hovered at the threshold, every muscle angled backward, yet she didn't go inside. Rain pooled in her collar. The board shifted under Max's grip. He found a notch, then a thin slit, smooth along one side as if a blade had traveled there. He slid 2 fingers into the gap, and felt air, cold and stale. "There's space," he whispered. Eleanor's heart hammered. She put her mouth near the seam. "If you can hear me, knock twice." 2 crisp taps answered through the wood. Mrs. Larson made a small sound, and pressed the phone tighter. "Confirmed communication," she told the dispatcher. "Please hurry." Zeus stilled, nose at the slit, drawing air as if scent alone could tell the whole story. He sneezed, then whined, eyes bright. Eleanor stroked his shoulder. "Good boy," she murmured. "You found them." "Them?" Clara asked, voice thinning. "Someone," Eleanor said. "Alive." A siren rose beyond the trees, distant, then closer, threading into rain like a promise stiffening into fact. Zeus resumed careful pawing, widening the gap, millimeter by millimeter, while Max steadied the sagging edge with both hands. Mud tried to close and then held, as if the yard itself decided courage mattered. "If this is a prank," Clara began. "Look at him," Mrs. Larson said, nodding at Zeus. "That isn't confusion. That's the The whisper, closer than breath now, wrapped itself around the syllable Eleanor had heard all night. Whether it rose from below, or from memory, finally burning hot enough to glow, the effect was the same: resolve. She leaned in until rain drummed on her hair. "We will not leave you. Keep breathing." Zeus's claws caught nylon. He hooked and pulled, revealing a strip of black fabric pinned beneath the plank. Max grabbed the edge and tugged. It shifted, then caught. He changed the angle, pulled again. Something inside scraped, then thudded against the covering, and Zeus barked once, sharp and commanding. Clara flinched. "This is insane." "It is real," Eleanor said, grief and love shaking in the same breath. "You don't have to believe me. Believe the ground." Miss Larson stepped closer and set her palm beside Eleanor's. The 2 women knelt shoulder to shoulder, while Max braced the frame, and Zeus held position, quivering yet controlled, a portrait of discipline under pressure. Rain ran down their faces, tasting of iron and wood. Have you ever felt a truth no one else believed? Hold on to that feeling, it might save someone. The siren doubled as a second unit entered the development. Silhouettes gathered behind curtains. Streetlights blinked on as the sky dimmed, though the hour wasn't late. The cul-de-sac felt like a stage, the yard a lit circle they could not leave until the scene was completed. Zeus flattened, ears pinned forward, eyes locked on the slit. Eleanor saw her reflection in his shine, old, soaked, unwavering. Her cane lay somewhere behind her. She hadn't noticed it fall. Max steadied her with an elbow while holding the board. Mrs. Larson's free hand found Eleanor's wrist, a warm pulse pushing back the chill. 2 patrol cars stopped at the curb, lights painting the rain red and blue. An officer vaulted the grass, took in the whole, the dog, the faces, then raised his radio. Others followed with kits. Questions stacked at their lips, yet none asked whether she was sure. Zeus had already sworn to it. Clara retreated a pace, then another. As if the scene were a tide she refused to let touch her shoes. She glanced at the street, then back to the hole, caught between leaving and staying. Eleanor felt a separate shiver that wasn't weather. This moment was drawing lines that would not erase. "Hold on," she said to the unseen voice. "Help is here." The rain softened into a steady veil. In that hush, 2 knocks returned stronger, steadier, promising that whoever waited below had heard and chosen to keep breathing. Eleanor let relief and fear braid together, without choosing one. The digging would continue, the boards would lift, and hidden things would reach the air. She reached for Max's hand. He gave it without looking away from the seam. Clara stood rigid beneath the porch light. Miss Larson squared her shoulders beside them, and Zeus, mud to his elbows and soaked to the skin, kept watch over the shivering earth, as if guarding a heartbeat no one else could hear. Rain tightened again as Zeus dug, and the earth answered with steady knocks below. Wind whipped sheets of rain across the cul-de-sac while the street lamp flickered. The stump gleamed slick and pale, a wet coin in dark earth. Eleanor knelt beside it, mud cold against her shins. The whisper that had haunted sleep rose from the ground as pressure rather than sound. Zeus barked, sharp and measured, a beacon that cut through the hiss and drew the night toward them. Mrs. Larson's screen door squealed. She peered from under her awning, scarf tugged tight, then stepped into the drizzle. "What is it?" she called, crossing the grass. Zeus answered with 2 crisp barks and resumed digging. paws slicing soaked soil. He wasn't frantic, he was exact, carving a crescent beside the stump. Eleanor pressed her palm to the ground. A tremor shivered through bone. "There," she whispered. "Do you feel that?" Max nodded, face drained, hand braced on raw wood, like someone knocking from far away. Clara hovered in the kitchen doorway, phone clenched, voice clipped. "You're scaring yourselves," she said. "Come inside before anyone falls." Mrs. Larson crouched without comment, robe hem drinking rain. "Tell me exactly." 2 knocks, then 3, Eleanor said. Air moving through a slit beneath a board, a bag wedged under it. They listened. Rain rattled the rails. The streetlight buzzed. Then it came, a muffled cry, thin and crushed, lifting just beyond speech. Not pipes, not wind, a voice flattened by weight. Mrs. Larson's eyes sharpened. She leaned closer, set 2 fingers to the mud and closed her eyes, listening through skin. The cry returned, fraying into a rap. When she looked up, her face had shifted from skeptical neighbor to witness. "Someone is under there," she said. "You were right." Zeus loosed a volley, 3 barks, evenly spaced, then pushed his muzzle to the seam, inhaled and pawed again with careful strokes that widened the channel by inches. Eleanor slid her fingers into the slit and found the bag's edge, slick nylon grinding against rough saw marks. Cold air pooled around her knuckles, laced with bleach and wet soil. "If you can hear me, knock twice," she said, keeping her voice low and steady. 2 faint taps answered, desperate and precise. "Hold on," she said. "Help is coming." Mrs. Larson had already dialed. "Emergency," she said. Live voice beneath a fresh stump. Audible knocks, animal alerting. "Send police, fire and medics." She recited the address, then squeezed Eleanor's wrist. "I believe you," she said softly. "Stay with them." Clara stepped onto the first stair, rain spangling her blouse. "Don't move anything," she warned. "Let professionals handle it." "We're keeping contact and air," Mrs. Larson replied. "No pulling until they arrive." Zeus paused, ear cocked as if parsing an instruction only he could hear. He shifted, braced and scraped once more. A thin plank declared itself under his claws with a hollow clack. Max slid beside him and cleared mud with careful fingers. The ground tried to slump back. He supported the edge with his forearm to hold the trench open. The bag twitched, its cord rasped against wood, tight as a ligature. Eleanor pressed her mouth near the seam. "Breathe with me," she said. "In through your nose, out through your mouth. 1, 2. A breath answered, ragged but obedient. Sirens rose, faint, then brightening in waves. The street lamp flickered, failed, then relit. Zeus stood like a dam, body blocking runoff, eyes fixed on the seam. His growl settled into a low vibration that said, "Here." 2 patrol cars slid to the curb, lights washing the siding red and blue. Officer Daniel Reed jogged across the lawn, crouched by the hole, and said, "Can you hear me?" A faint knock answered, then a strangled cry. "We've got a live entrapment," he radioed. "Probable cavity under stump, fire for lift and shore. Medic on standby." Clara folded her arms. "Please tell them no one touches anything unstable." "We'll manage the scene," Reed said. He met Zeus's stare, and gave a quick nod. "Good dog." A fire engine and a rescue truck arrived within breath. Floodlights snapped on, bleaching the yard to a harsh noon. Firefighters trotted gear through the mud, cribbing, wedges, pry bars, a compact jack, tarps to divert water. A medic knelt by the opening. "Keep talking to them," she said. "If responses change, call it out." Zeus stepped aside just enough to give room, then resumed guard, shoulder touching Eleanor's hip. Reed's partner slid a flat bar into the seam and levered, while another firefighter slipped cribbing beneath to hold gains. The board resisted, then lifted half an inch. Cold air exhaled from below. A rubber tube lay kinked and caked with mud beside the bag. "Airway," the medic said. She pulled it free, cleared muck, and coaxed it into the gap. "Breathe here," she called. Nice and slow. The response came as a wet, hungry gasp. Mrs. Larson tightened her grip on Eleanor's arm. Max braced her so she could lean without collapsing. Clara remained motionless, gaze fixed. Rain hammered harder. The stump glistened. The bag jerked, making the cord squeal. Zeus barked twice, then fell silent, ears pinned. Reed leveraged another fraction. The opening widened, then tried to close as soil slumped. Shoring on the right, he said. Blocks went in. A tarp redirected water. The gap held. Reed reached in, found the knot and sawed through the cord. He peeled fabric back a few inches, admitting air without turning the covering to sludge. The voice inside broke into sobbing breaths. Eleanor put her lips near the opening. "You're not alone," she murmured. "We're." Neighbors gathered under umbrellas, drawn by sirens and Zeus's alarm. Clara took one step closer. Mud licked her shoes. "This is dangerous," she said. "Courage is moving anyway," Mrs. Larson said, eyes on the hole. "When everyone doubts you, will you speak up? One voice can change everything." Reed nodded to the firefighter with the jack. "On 3, he said. "Lift and hold while we crib." They counted. Pressure creaked through wood. The board rose an inch, then 2. Cribbing slid underneath. The opening steady. Cool breath washed Eleanor's face from the darkness. "Can you tell us your name?" she asked. A struggle of sound came back, unintelligible but determined. The medic leaned in. "Skin temperature will be low. Get blankets ready. We'll cut more fabric." She glanced at Eleanor. "Keep them anchored." "I'm here," Eleanor said. "Keep counting with me. 1, 2. Zeus shifted to block a fresh stream and nosed the seam as if willing warmth into it. Max held shoring steady. Reed eased the knife farther along the edge. The bag loosened. The board groaned. Lightning stitched the cloud base. The street lamp blinked. For a heartbeat everything turned white. Mrs. Larson's hand steadied Eleanor's arm. Max's weight braced her side. Zeus's heat anchored the edge. Reed's strength held the lift. The medic's calm kept time. The jack creaked again. The opening widened a final inch. Cold air surged. The bag shifted toward light, as if the earth itself had decided to give it back. Zeus let out one low, reverent sound, and Eleanor kept talking into the dark, drawing a hidden life toward breath with promise and will. Rain thickened to a cold curtain as Officer Daniel Reed crossed the yard, cap low. Zeus met him, pivoted and drove to the raw stump, barking in clipped bursts like coordinates. Reed dropped to a knee at the shored opening, palm up to hold neighbor's back, eyes narrowing at the slit beneath the plank. "Slow and controlled," he told the fire crew. "No lateral pressure. Keep air moving." He leaned close. Through rain and breath he caught it. A faint thud, a scrape, a second thud too regular to be run off. He tapped twice. 2 knocks replied. Eleanor steadied herself with a hand on Zeus's shoulder. "You're not alone," she said into the gap. "Match me. In 2, out, 2. Max braced the cribbing, jaw tight. Clara stood under the porch light, arms folded, gaze flattened to unreadable calm. A crime scene tech ringed the stump with flags. Waterproof lamps washed the cut surface straight, kerf lines a notch chiseled where no contractor would bother. Adhesive along a seam, nylon fibers snagged in grain. The tech uncovered a kinked rubber tube embedded beside the slit, its length smeared with mud and chemical tang. "Breathing conduit," she said. "Deliberate." Reed nodded. "Photo, swab and bag the exposed section. Leave the airway intact." He keyed his radio. "Planned entrapment. Begin canvas for cameras and late vehicles." Zeus circled, nose skimming puddles, then locked on drag lines faintly grooved into the lawn, parallel tracks from the fence to the stump. He pawed, then pointed with his muzzle. Reed traced the trail with his light until it vanished under the pickets. "Cast before runoff eats them," he ordered. "Check nails, bright heads mean fresh reset." The medic slid a thin heat blanket through the gap. Cold breath rolled up, edged with bleach. "Respirations shallow but present," she said. "Hypothermic risk. Lift in increment." "Copy," Reed answered. He flattened beside the opening. "We're raising the board a fraction," he called. The jack creaked. Wood rose the width of a coin. Cribbing slid in. The opening held. Mrs. Larson knelt next to Eleanor. "I've got your elbow," she whispered. Zeus leaned against Eleanor's shin, steady as a brace. The whisper that had haunted the house returned as the smallest shape of a voice. Eleanor breathed so the person below could borrow her cadence. Clara's phone buzzed. She didn't answer. "If the yard fails, we're liable," she said. "Liability already exists," Reed replied. He returned to the plank. "Lift a hair." The board rose again, settled onto new wood. The medic angled the tube. cleared mud, and coaxed air along the clean section. The answering gasp sounded like a match catching. The tech's camera clicked. Nylon cord, double surgeon's knot, chain oil near the tie, she said. Not sap. Document, Reed said. After extraction, we inventory all saws used here and by the removal crew. His gaze flicked to the garage. Log serials, call the shop if any tool is out. Clara's mouth tightened. Ours is being serviced, she said. Receipt inside. We'll verify, Reed replied. Neutral. Zeus swept the perimeter, then lay with his chest against the mud, damming a stream that tried to drown the gap. His eyes never left the darkness. Every few breaths, he let out a small contained growl, not a threat but focus. Subject. The medic called. You're doing great. Keep breathing with the woman. The response came as two shaky knocks. Eleanor held her ground. In your darkest moment, what keeps you fighting? Cling to hope. It's stronger than fear. Max's fingers tightened. Mrs. Larson nodded once. Reed studied the notch. The cut edge showed clean kerf marks, then a shallow hand tool bevel. He slid a thin blade into the bag's seam and shaved fabric away from the airway. Cut and cover, he warned. He peeled back the nylon an inch, then two, enough to keep breath running, without letting soil sluice inside. The scent changed, human skin beneath bleach and rain. Floodlights threw the cul-de-sac into stark relief. A deputy moved along the tape, taking names. Another worked the alley for footage. Zeus's ears flicked. He raised his head, listened, then lowered his chin to the mud again as if lending warmth to the ground. Reed reached into the void until his fingertips touched nylon and the tremor beneath it. We feel you, he said. We're not leaving. Another fraction. The medic said. I can pass a mask if we clear one more inch. The jack turned. The plank resisted, then offered. Cribbing locked. The medic slid a compact mask through the seam and sealed it to invisible skin. Breathe, she could. The capnometer line steadied. The tech swabbed the adhesive. Silicone sealant, hardware grade, she said. Same on the tube collar. Whoever built this new water would try to flood the airway. That makes premeditation, Reed said. He signaled a deputy. Request warrants for exterior cameras. Prioritize the alley. Ask the tree service for rosters and rote logs. Eleanor let a shiver pass. Her dream had been warning, not delusion. She bent closer. We hear you, she said. Stay with us. A soft thud answered. Clara took one step down, then stopped, gaze unreadable. She scanned the alley, then the crew, then the marks in the lawn. As if assembling a ledger, Reed assigned a deputy to the porch. Keep observers back, he said. Log departure. Max glanced at his mother, then returned to the board. His hands shook but he didn't let the shoring slip. Mrs. Larson murmured numbers, keeping time for Eleanor's cues. Zeus steadied the stream with his body when runoff threatened the seam. Improving, the medic said. Airway is buying time. She looked at Reed. One more incremental lift. On three, Reed said. 1, 2, 3. The board rose another coin's width. Cribbing slid home. The opening held. Cold air burped up, then evened. The mask hissed. The tech finished bagging the tube's loose end. Common hardware stock, she said. We'll dust the collar for prints, and test the sealant. Good, Reed said. Collect twine fragments and shoe impressions by the fence. Those grooves show a dragged low. He scanned the lawn, then the faces within the light's hard circle. Eleanor didn't move. Her hand found Zeus's ear. Max's shoulder pressed her hip. Mrs. Larson steadied her forearm. The storm rattled gutters, but the team's rhythm held. Lift, shore, breathe, document, repeat. Subject, Reed called. You're almost out. Keep breathing with us. Two firmer knocks answered. Zeus gave a soft, approving rumble. An ambulance door thumped. Paramedics jogged gear toward the scene. Reed signaled. The jack turned a final fraction. The plank creaked, lifted and settled onto solid wood. The opening, still narrow, was now enough. I can reach, the medic said. She slid both hands through the gap. Wrist, zip tie, she reported. Cutting, her shears clicked, pulse weak, present. She looked up. We extract on the next lift. Reed's gaze took in the polished notch, the sealed tube, the lines in the grass, a design with intent, broken tonight by a dog that wouldn't yield, and a grandmother who refused to be quiet. One more inch, he said, and we bring them into the air. Right here, right now, together. Floodlights bleached the rain into white cords while mud-swallowed boots and the stump shone like a slick coin under the glare. Crews worked in a tight rhythm around the short opening. Zeus held a low line beside the trench, fur-soaked, ears pinned, body blocking runoff that tried to pour into the gap. Officer Daniel Reed lay flat beside the board and watched the jack rise a fraction. "Hold," he said. Cribbing slid in. The plank groaned and held. The medic leaned through the seam and adjusted the mask sealed to a cheek below. "Capnography climbing," she called. "Keep breathing." Two faint knocks answered. Eleanor knelt in the mud with Mrs. Larson bracing her elbow and Max steadying a wedge with both hands. The whisper that had dragged her awake now pulsed through wood into bone. Rain ran down her face, tasting of iron and bleach. She set one hand on Zeus's ear. A thank you passed without words. "Incremental lift," Reed ordered. The jack turned. The opening widened the width of a coin. Soil slumped. A firefighter tamped wedges tight. Water sheeted across tarps, but some still wanted the hole. Zeus dammed the shallow stream with his ribcage and fixed his eyes on the dark. Clara stood under the porchlight, jaw locked, silence wrapped around her like a coat. She watched hands, tools, and faces. "Subject responds to verbal," the medic said. "I have wrist contact. Cold. Weak." She worked the shears through a plastic tie and felt a twitch. "That's it. Squeeze if you can." A faint squeeze came. Reed gave the next count. "One more fraction. Then we dig by hand." They lifted. The plank creaked and rose. Cribbing locked. The gap held. "I can see hair," the medic said. Small debris falling. Shields. A poly sheet slid between the bag and the plank. Another widened the trench with gloved fingers, scooping mud that tried to close. A knot, half cut, sagged in the opening like a tongue. "Finish it," Reed said. The tech hooked, sliced, and peeled. Cold air surged with a sound that was not wind, a stifled gasp. Eleanor put her mouth near the seam. "We're here," she murmured. "Sat improving," the medic said. "We need a tunnel wide enough for shoulders. Next lift buys extraction." Reed looked at Zeus. "Guard," he said. Zeus rumbled and held his post against the water. "On three," Reed called. The jack turned. The board rose. Cribbing slid. "Hold." The opening showed more than shadow, a pale temple. Lashes clumped with grit. "By hand," Reed said. They dug with fingers and scrapers, carving a channel, pausing to let the wash drain. The medic reached farther, found a second tie binding arms. "Cutting," she said. The shears clicked. The freed limb trembled and tried to cover a face the opening still hid. "Good," she whispered. "Stay with me." "Who is it?" Mrs. Larson asked. Eleanor knew before anyone answered. Breath cadence. The shape of a cheek. The whisper from her dream snapped into place. She didn't speak his name, but her heart shouted it. Zeus barked twice, sharp and certain, then went still. Reed angled his light. He saw a strip of a face and the rim of a shoulder. "We're pulling," he said. Counter-pressure ready. They widened the tunnel another inch. Mud slumped, but wedges and hands held. The medic slid both arms in. "On my mark," she said. Gentle anterior traction. Now they drew a body forward inch by inch, past cut fabric and beveled edge, past splinters and grit. The mask tilted. She reseated it. A shoulder cleared, then the other, then a chest that rose under plastic. Reed cupped the head and shielded against a falling cloth. The face arrived, muddied, chilled, lips blue at the edges, lashes pasted, a bruise shadowing one brow. "Max." Eleanor's breath left, and she staggered back. "Max," she managed. His eyes fluttered, glazed, searching light. He made a sound that was not a word, only a knee. "Move him to the board," the medic said. They eased him onto a backboard and slid him under the plank. Hands coordinated without waste. A firefighter supported legs. Reed protected the airway and the medic counted each lift. Mud clung and fell in heavy coin. Cut ties swung from wrists and ankles like ugly bracelets. Eleanor reached for his fingers. They were icy but alive. He squeezed once, weak and real. Tears cut clean tracks through grime. Zeus pressed his nose to Max's ear and whined, then licked mud from his cheek with careful single strokes. "Core temp low," the medic reported. Blankets, warmed saline. Pupils. A penlight flashed. Reactive. She checked the collarbone and ribs. No gross deformity. Reed scanned the cavity now that Max's torso had cleared. Secure evidence, he told the tech. Tube, not tail. Adhesive, bevel. Cover the void. We'll return after transport. Rain hammered harder as if it wanted to erase what it had seen. The stump gleamed, a ghastly altar stripped of its secret. Clara stepped down one stair, then another. She didn't speak. She didn't reach for Max. Her silence hung. Eleanor leaned over the board. "Gran's here," she said. Voice steady now that purpose had burned through shock. "Breathe with me. In 2, out 2. Max obeyed. The capnometer climbed. Color threaded his lip. They carried him toward the ambulance through sucking mud, floodlights bouncing off rain into shards. Zeus trotted along the stretcher, shoulder brushing the rail. At the curb the medic counted down, and they lifted into the box, heat washing over them. She closed the doors, then opened one. "Family," she said. Eleanor climbed with Mrs. Larson's hand at her back. She glanced once at the porch. Reed strung fresh tape, logged tools and looked to the fence where drag marks led and vanished. Clara stood motionless, water tracking her jaw. Their gazes met. Eleanor saw no relief, only calculation. Inside the ambulance, the medic wrapped Max in warm packs, placed a line and adjusted oxygen. "Stay with me," she said. "You did the hard part. We're headed to the hospital." Max's lashes trembled. He tried a word. It collapsed to a breath. He found Eleanor's hand again and held it. Zeus leaped into the rig and sat on the rubber floor near Max's feet, waiting for permission that no one gave, because no one wanted him to leave. He planted himself at the stump, a sentinel who had traded one post for another without hesitation. Eleanor pressed her forehead to Max's and let the tears come. They carried salt and rain and a gratitude so fierce it ate. Beyond the doors the storm kept scouring the street, and in the wash of sirens she heard a truth that matched her dream. Sometimes the ground speaks. A dog answers and a life returns because one voice refused to be quiet. Clara remained on the porch, eyes fixed on the cut wood as if it might offer a different ending. She didn't step forward when the engine growled. She didn't lift a hand as the ambulance pulled away. She stood while rain erased footprints and light spun, and the silence that clung to her felt colder than the night. Rain combed the cul-de-sac while floodlights carved lanes across the haze lawn. Tape circled the slick stump. Officer Daniel Reed stood under the porch eave, brim dripping. Clara waited on the top step, posture immaculate, eyes dry, shoes muddy only at the edges. "Mr. Price," Reed said, steady as the rain, "start in the morning. Where were you? Who did you see? What did you touch?" "Office," she replied. "Calls all day. I swung by to check pills and groceries. I found chaos, a dog tearing up the yard, and you." "Tree removal. Your authorization." "Yes. The arborist warned us. Roots in the line. I scheduled the crew. Where's your chainsaw?" "In for service," she said. A deputy lifted a clear bag from the garage bench. Compact electric saw, fresh oil smell. Service tag dated today. Dust filmed inside the guard. "We picked it up," Clara said. "That proves nothing. Who moved it to the bench?" "I did." Across the grass, Zeus sat at the tape, coat soaked, eyes fixed on faint drag marks cutting from the fence to the stump and vanishing into darker earth. A crime tech approached with bags. "Zip ties matching those cut from the victim," she said. "Bulk pack torn. Found in your garage cabinet. Yellow twine consistent with fibers at the seam." She raised a roll mottled with sap, several lengths missing. "Suggestive is not guilt," Clara answered. "We keep supplies. Adults solve problems." Reed nodded. "When did you last handle that roll?" "I don't time-stamp chores." He crouched by the marks. "Cast before the rain eats them." Plaster spread like small islands. Beyond the slats, the grooves bent toward the alley. A darker smear clung to the fence base. Reed touched it, sniffed, and frowned. "Chain oil outside the line," he called. "Swab it." Eleanor stood with Mrs. Larson at the walk, blankets slipping from her shoulders, eyes fierce despite the tremor in her hands. She watched Clara the way a hawk studies a field. "Clara," Eleanor said, voice low but sharp, "tell him why Max was under our tree." Clara didn't blink. "I didn't do this. You fed a dream until it grew teeth. Panic makes patterns out of mud. I am not a monster. You're not frightened. Mrs. Larson murmured. I am contained, Clara said. Shock reads like ice, sometimes. Between 3 and 4? Reed asked. Office, she said. I left at 4:30. Check my logs. Anyone else here today? Grocery delivery at noon. The tech returned with a tube in a bag. Silicone sealant matches the airway collar, she said. Brand and color consistent with this cartridge from your shelf. Clara let out a breath. Households have sealant. You're turning hardware into confession. Eleanor stepped forward, shaking off Mrs. Larson's hand. You pushed to fell that tree, she said, each word placed like a wedge. You signed while calling me confused. You watched the trunk hauled away. You stood where the plank lay. When Zeus barked at the ground, you told me to sit down. Grief is distorting you, Clara replied. You want a villain because fear craves a face. Fear wants truth, Eleanor said. You choose tidy numbers. Reed lifted a palm. Consent to search of your garage and vehicle. Will request warrants either way. Clara's silence stretched. Search, she said. Prove how far you can misread rain. Deputies moved. One returned with cutters scuffed by fresh scratches, a coil of nylon cord, and a pry bar nicked with sap. Another held a receipt, saw a pickup at 1:43 p.m., signed by Clara Price. We needed it back for weekend work, she said. After the maple fell, Mrs. Larson said. Branches remained, Clara said. Zeus leaned toward the fence, nose at the seam of 2 boards, body taut. Reed looked into the alley. Gravel glistened. A second set of impressions crossed the first, narrower, a different tread, alternating with the wider grooves. 2 movers, Reed said to the tech. Cast both. Check drains for fibers. Eleanor edged closer to Clara, until rain streaked both faces. When thunder scared Max last month, he slept on my couch, she said. You called him theatrical. When I asked to leave the maple another week so he could say goodbye, you called it a waste. Tonight a dog dragged truth to daylight. You watched a hole open and worried about liability. Clara's eyes hardened. Stop. I am trying to keep this family from collapsing into superstition and scandal. Yesterday evening, Reed said. Work, she answered. I ate at my desk. The custodian saw me. Will confirm. He surveyed the yard, where the stump glinted like a coin glued to mud. Scene stays locked through daylight, he told the team. No one crosses tape without me. He looked at Zeus. Good boy, he said. The tail tapped once. A deputy emerged from the house with a lockbox. Inside lay industrial ties with 2 strips missing, a utility blade snapped clean, and a receipt for yard bags purchased yesterday. The deputy logged them. Clara looked at Eleanor. You will ruin me with your stories, she said soft. You ruined yourself with your choices, Eleanor answered. Look at the grooves. Look at the oil. Something heavy crossed this yard, and someone helped it. Reed's radio crackled. He listened, then glanced at Eleanor. Hospital says Max is awake, he said. He's stable. Relief lifted Eleanor's chest. He will tell you, she said. For the first time Clara's gaze flicked toward the alley. Zeus caught it and shifted his weight, muscles straining tight. Reed noticed the glance, the dog's reply, the way the ruts bent beyond the slats, and disappeared into gravel, where a camera might not reach. Miss Price, he said evenly, does anyone else possess a key? A colleague, a contractor, a friend with your trust? No, she said. I keep our home secure. Then explain those tracks, Eleanor said. Explain a breathing tube under wood without your notice. Explain why you froze when he barked. Clara's mouth thinned. You're dangerous when you think you're right. I'm dangerous when I am, Eleanor said. I am old, not foolish. I heard him. The dog heard him. The ground tried to speak, and you tried to quiet it. Reed closed his notebook. We're not finishing this tonight, he said. We'll hold the perimeter, and return with daylight. Miss Price, stay reachable. Do not leave town without contacting me. We will pull logs, video, service calls and receipts. Clara lifted her chin. I have a job. I will not cower for the theater. This isn't theater, Reed said. It's evidence. Eleanor stepped back, fury steady. Miss Larson settled the blanket around her shoulders. Zeus pressed against her shin, warmth moving through fur and bone. The dog turned toward the fence, listening to what the alley held back. Rain thinned to a thread, tape snapped and settled. Neighbors watched in silence. Proof leaned Clara's way. Ties, sealant, saw, posture. Yet the grooves beyond the boards suggested a partner in the dark. A second presence pulling the other end of the twine. Zeus kept staring at that line like a promise. And Eleanor, fierce despite the shake in her fingers, understood that tonight had revealed only the first half of the truth. By morning, the storm had thinned to drizzle, and the cul-de-sac looked scrubbed beneath a sky the color of tin. Tape still ringed the stump, mud kept the memory of boots and wedges. Eleanor stood on the porch with a blanket around her shoulders, and Zeus pressed to her leg, both listening to a silence that felt earned. Mrs. Larson waited at the steps with a thermos. A cruiser idled at the curb. Officer Daniel Reed crossed the yard with rain on his jacket and a flash drive sealed into evidence. "We have footage," he said. "A porch camera on the alley caught movement behind your fence before the rescue. Two figures, one carries a board, the other holds a coil and a bag." Clara stood in the doorway, hair neat, blouse unwrinkled, face set into the careful flatness she wore during fights she meant to win. "Shadows and bad compression," she replied. "Cameras lie. Panic fills blanks. A tech brought stills under plastic. In grayscale, the gravel looked like spilled salt. Two shapes crossed the frame, one taller, hood up, the other shorter, stockier, head bare, hair pulled tight. The shorter turned as a lamp spilled light. The profile made Mrs. Larson gasp. "That is you," Eleanor said to Clara, voice quiet and fierce. "You said you were at the office." Clara held her gaze. "It could be anyone. Light lies, angels lie. I picked up a saw at 1:43 and returned to work." "The clip runs from 1:23 to 1:31, Reed said. "The shop camera shows you leaving at 1:51 and turning toward this block. Your plates match the intersection feed." Umbrellas bloomed along the sidewalk as neighbors edged closer. Zeus shifted between Eleanor and the steps, then settled, gaze flicking to the alley. The tech opened another sleeve. Adhesive smeared along a beveled edge, nylon fibers snagged in grain, the collar of a breathing tube seated like a port. "Your shelves hold the same sealant," she said, "and a bulk pack of zip ties missing lengths that match the cuts on the victim." Clara folded her arms. "You cannot build a case on household items," and a disoriented boy. "He was buried," Mrs. Larson said. "He knocked until the dog heard him." Eleanor did not raise her voice. "You called my dreams poison," she said. "You said Zeus was reacting to me. The ground spoke, and you tried to muffle it." Reed read from a card. "Clara Price, you are under arrest on suspicion of attempted murder, kidnapping, unlawful restraint and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent." Two officers stepped forward. Clara's jaw tensed, then smoothed. She turned her wrists, composed as cuffs clicked. Thunder rolled far off. Zeus's ears twitched. He stayed planted. Clara looked past the officers to Eleanor. "You're making a spectacle," she said, heat finally cracking her ice. "I prefer oxygen," Eleanor replied. He did too. They walked Clara down the slick steps, past the stump that gleamed like a wound refusing to heal. Umbrellas lifted. Whispers moved. The cul-de-sac's gaze tightening into a ring of judgment, fear and pity. The cruiser door shut. Red and blue washed the puddles. Eleanor's body loosened as if a wire had touched ground. She sank onto the step. Zeus pressed his shoulder to her shin, until warmth returned. Reed crouched near the blanket's edge. The second figure never turned a face. He sat. Hood high, long sleeves, gloves. The stride differs from Clara's. Prints behind the fence suggest a lighter person. "We'll clean the audio for a voice." "Clara didn't work alone," Eleanor said. "It wasn't a question. We'll follow it," he said. "Today isn't the end." She looked toward the yard where lines radiated from the stump, tracks rain hadn't erased, as if the ground refused to surrender evidence. Zeus shook water and went to the fence, sniffing at the seam where an alley draft curled. He rumbled low, a promise to stay. The hospital call. Max had taken warm broth and kept it. He asked about Zeus first, then about her. "He wants to know if you heard him," the nurse said. "Tell him I did," Eleanor replied. "Tell him I never stopped." She walked the perimeter with Reed before leaving, pausing where drag marks bent toward the gate. Cast trays came up like fragile maps. Distinct treads, a deputy reported. One set matches shoes from your rack, the other looks like a popular athletic sole. Reed pointed at a smear beneath a loose picket. The tech swabbed. Chain oil again, she said. Inside, Eleanor changed shoes, wiped grease from the table, and set water for tea she wouldn't drink. Mrs. Larson towel-dried already clean mugs, a ritual to occupy trembling minutes. "I'll drive you," Mrs. Larson said. "You kept the courage tempo," Eleanor answered. She knelt to eye level with Zeus. "Coming?" The dog placed one paw on her foot and held it there, a pledge before movement. As they reached the door, Reed called, "We'll keep a unit post. If you remember any detail, an odd smell, a phrase, call any hour." He hesitated. Max said a name before he slept. Not full, just a sound. "We'll wait to press him." Eleanor nodded. The absence already had a shape. Someone who liked edges and quiet tasks, who moved when others looked away. She stepped into damp air. The street looked cleaner than it had any right to look. The stump glistened like a truth nobody could stuff back under planks. At the hospital, Max's hand found hers before his eyes opened. "Gran," he whispered, an anchor thrown into safe water. Zeus rested his chin on the mattress and watched every breath. Machines hummed softly. In half-light, Eleanor told a simple story. A dream that insisted. A dog that refused to stand down. Neighbors who listened. An officer who believed mud's arithmetic. And a boy who kept breathing because hope made space under wood. Max smiled without strength. "You heard me," he said. "I always do," she answered. "And when I didn't, Zeus did." She kissed his forehead and felt heat that wasn't fever but life returning to itself. On the way out, she paused by a window where rain drew a soft veil over the lot. A cruiser idled under a lamp. Reed stood beside it on his phone, handwriting notes toward a warrant. Eleanor studied her reflection, layered with clouds. "Truth can hide in shadows. Will you keep searching for it?" she murmured, half to herself, half to anyone who might need it next. Back home, the cul-de-sac settled to its heartbeat. Tape fluttered like a tattered flag around the stump. The porch light burned steadily. Zeus walked the rooms once, then returned and settled with his head across her foot, eyes toward the yard. Eleanor let the blanket slide, palms open on the armrests, breath finally even. Vindication felt less like triumph and more like permission to rest and then rise. The mystery had not ended, but a boy slept, a dog kept watch, a neighbor promised soup at 6, and an officer followed a line rain had failed to erase. Somewhere, a tall figure thought night could keep a secret. Somewhere, an engine ticked as it cooled. Somewhere, a pair of shoes dried near a heater, mud hardening into a map that could still be read. Eleanor closed her eyes and listened without fear. The house creaked, the refrigerator clicked, the mantel clock ticked toward afternoon. Outside, thunder rolled one last time like a curtain lowering. Zeus lifted his head, checked the yard, and lay it down again, satisfied for now. When she slept, the dream returned, gentler, the maple alive again, leaves whispering like a choir, roots humming with names. This time, the voice didn't beg, it thanked. She woke to tires on wet asphalt, and the soft clink of a gate latch. The posted unit idled under the street lamp, a promise made visible. She stroked Zeus's ruff and felt gratitude ground her like a stake-driven tree. "We'll keep listening," she said into the quiet, and the dog answered with a single thump of his tail. Reed's partner came from the alley with a clipboard and a bagged shard cut from the cord on the airway collar. "Edge beveled by a fresh blade," he said. "Residue matches the ceiling." Reed logged it, then looked over the fence toward the garages along the gravel lane. A door showed a new scrape at bumper height. Beneath it lay a thin smear of chain oil. "We'll canvass these units," he said, "and pull nearby tool receipts." Mrs. Larson squeezed Eleanor's shoulder. "You stood when it mattered," she said. "Don't let anyone shrink that." Eleanor nodded, yet her attention kept sliding to Zeus, whose ears tilted at passing cars and whose gaze returned, always to the scene where the night had opened. She understood his vigil. Some part of the story still waited outside the circle of light, listening back. On the drive to the hospital, she caught her reflection and recognized a steadiness she had not felt in years. It was a promise to follow each sound, until an answer stepped forward. The hospital room held the kind of quiet that feels earned, Monitors steady, rain glossing the window while morning softened to a pale ribbon above Ohio roofs. Eleanor sat by Max's bed, fingers laced with his, feeling warmth return to his skin in careful waves. Zeus lay at the threshold like a carved guardian, tail thumping whenever Max stirred or the nurse smiled. Officer Daniel Reed had stepped out to take a call, leaving a note that he would return with updates and keep a unit posted by the stump. Max opened his eyes to the room, then to her face, then to the bright steadiness in Zeus's gaze. "Gran," he whispered, the word frayed but intact. She pressed her forehead to his and gathered him the way she did after storms. "I heard you," he said, "under everything." She nodded. "I heard you in the dark before there was sound," she answered. "I heard you when the ground tried to speak and was told to hush. I will hear you when you whisper and when you shout." Zeus rose, set his chin on the mattress and wagged measured approval. Reed came back with plastic sleeves of stills and that quiet focus he wore like armor. "Clara is booked," he said. "Charges filed. We pulled the alley clip and intersection feed. Warrants went out for garages and camera systems. One figure is Clara, the second keeps a hood and gloves. We will find them." Mrs. Larson straightened and nodded once. "We will keep our porch lights ready," she said. Reed allowed himself a half smile. "You would keep the sun up if asked." The hours settled into gentle tasks. A nurse brought broth and crackers. Zeus accepted water from a steel bowl and returned to his post. Max dozed, woke and dozed again. Eleanor washed grit from his hair with a warm cloth, each careful stroke a promise sent backward and forward. When he slept, she watched rain creep down the glass and thought about rings and roots and how a tree can be felled in a day while the shade it made keeps cooling a porch for years. The stump still waited under tape like a clock face that would not reset. She imagined spring. A sapling staked straight, soil tucked, water dark as tea around its base. By late afternoon the clouds thinned. Texts arrived from the cul-de-sac, a repaired porch light, a casserole campaign. Umbrellas ranked beside doors. A photo showed two children leaving a cardboard sign at the tape, "We believe Gran," with a heroic dog drawn in thick marker. Eleanor laughed and felt the laugh travel through her hands into Max's pulse. They discharged him to home care with a strict calendar. Miss Larson drove through streets that still shimmered. A cruiser idled under their street lamp. The stump caught a shard of late sun and flashed like a coin at the bottom of a well. Zeus led the steps, pivoted back and escorted Max inside with the gravity of a knight delivering a print. Lemon oil, wool and a faint bleach thread hung in the house, but old warmth rose to meet them. Eleanor settled Max on the couch, quilt tucked, mug warm. The dog curled along his shins like living weight. Neighbors came in waves, soft-voiced and practical. Someone tightened the back gate. Someone left bread still warm in a towel. Someone set daisies on the sill as if daring the room to choose light. Reed stood in the doorway long enough to say, "We run the shoe cast tonight and canvass the garages at first light." When quiet returned, Eleanor leaned her head against Max's shoulder while Zeus sighed at their feet. The clock ticked, a latch clicked, and beyond the fence the alley kept its secrets, though perhaps less sure of itself than yesterday. Even with warmth rising and a plan unfolding, one thread stayed taut. Somewhere a second figure had walked through rain without haste, counting on shadows and schedules, betting a quiet street would stay asleep. The thought no longer carried panic, it carried purpose. "We will help them find you," she said softly. Zeus lifted his head and listened to the same seam of night. "If you are hearing this with us now, if you have ever felt a small truth flicker inside you while others laughed or looked away, hold it steady. Have you ever dismissed a feeling because it did not arrive with paperwork? Don't. The world is stitched by people who choose to listen when the easy answer says hush." Eleanor was told to sit down. She stood. A dog was told to be quiet. He kept barking until a street leaned close. A boy kept breathing because hope carved a space under the wood. The cul-de-sacs shifted by inches toward one another. Mrs. Larson stacked bowls and left a note about soup at 6. A child taped a drawing of Zeus to the mailbox with the proud label "Hero." The posted unit rolled forward in a slow patrol that felt like a hand on a shoulder. Under the porch light, Eleanor saw her reflection and did not look away. She had been called confused. She listened anyway. Vindication did not feel like triumph, it felt like permission to rest and then rise. Her hands shook, not from fear but from release, finally finding its exit. Eleanor's dream saved a life. Don't let this story end here. Share it, subscribe, and uncover the next truth with us. Tell us where you're watching from, your city and country, so this circle maps its courage. Comment with a time you trusted your instinct when others doubted. Tap the bell to follow the mysteries that matter. Send this to someone who needs proof that intuition and community save lives. Truth can hide in shadows. Will you keep searching for it? We listen together. Night returned softer, storm spent, streets rinsed clean. Zeus took one last round of the rooms, paused at the back door and scanned the yard. He did not growl, he watched, then returned to lie his head across Max's feet. Max slid deeper into the pillows, color warming his face. Eleanor turned off the lamp and let the dark be kind. Somewhere a garage door clicked and the light blinked off too quickly. Somewhere a pair of shoes dried near a vent, mud flaking into shapes a cast could match. Somewhere a hood hung on a peg above gloves that still remembered a board's rough edge. The questions waited, patient and unsatisfied. The answers would come. Eleanor closed her eyes and listened, not for whispers this time, but for ordinary life reclaiming its lane. The refrigerator's steady hum, the mantel clock's even tick, the quiet shift of a dog guarding what he loves. The storm had written its lines across their street, and still the morning would arrive. When it did, she would plant the first stake for a new tree, steady the sapling, pour dark water and thank the old roots for keeping their promise. Before sleep she touched Max's hair and then Zeus's ruff. "We keep listening," she said into the gentle dark. The dog answered with a single thump of his tail, and the house at last agreed.